Some kids have incredible endurance. They can get through anything. But other kids, it's just not in their nature.
Children who are bullied can feel very bad about themselves. They can really get themselves into a sad place and sometimes even want to hurt themselves.
I never thought that anything dangerous would happen to Jared or that any child would want to hurt him. And he was a nice kid and very well liked, particularly with his age group. Jared didn't speak until he was about 2.5 years old. He had had tubes put in his ears, and it gave him delayed speaking abilities. Because he couldn't speak, he became a physical person. Climb up, Jared. Touch the top.
There wasn't anything that Jared couldn't climb. He was the kind of boy who had lots of tricks up his sleeves.
Jared loved this yard because it was just huge and there was a lot of things you could do. Over here by this tree, Jared would jump in the trampoline and do flips, and, well, he was just spectacular.
When he was 12 years old, Jared High started 6th grade at McLaughlin Middle School in Pasco, Washington.
Jared was an average student because of his verbal skills, and because of that, he was put in some special education classes.
Jared loved baseball and joined the school team as a manager. But one sunny afternoon in early May, the fun and games stopped. Court documents offer two versions of what happened that day.
It was around 4:30, and baseball practice hadn't quite gotten over yet, but there was no need for Jared to stay. He was the coach's assistant, so he asked the coach if he could leave.
Jared told us that there was this kid that had been teasing him.
He did not like Jared. He'd been treating him badly on the baseball field.
Could have been because he thought that Jared was too smart or too dumb, too ugly, too cute. It could have been any reason.
The boy at school followed Jared into the gym and started wailing on him and just beating him up and throwing him on the floor and kicking him.
But according to the other boy, Jared started the incident by calling him names and kicking him first.
Jared was partially blamed for this incident because he gave him the evil eye. He looked at him bad.
Court documents reveal that after a few minutes, the fight began to attract attention.
There were some bystanders, but they were all the bully's friends, so none of them would help. That night, right after the incident, Jared didn't want to talk about it. He was sick, he was throwing up, and I felt like the best thing to do is just to be as calm as possible and tell him we'll take care of it in the morning.
Jared was called into a meeting with the other student who was involved.
The vice principal put them in a room together, and he asked them what happened.
They blamed it on both of the kids.
The school then suspended Jared and the bully for 3 days and called it a fight.
According to Brenda's testimony, Jared started showing signs of depression in the months following the confrontation.
He just wasn't the fun-loving child that I had seen him grow up to be.
Jared didn't want to go out and play so much. I had to talk him into going to the park with me. He was just not interested.
He stopped playing with the computer. He stopped playing on the trampoline. He'd stay up all night.
I thought that Jared was just going through a phase. I thought, it's just another thing he's going to outgrow. He'll be fine.
Coming up.
Jared probably didn't have any hard time finding the gun, but he had to go and search for the cartridges.
In fall 1998, 12-year-old Jared High was still haunted by memories of a violent confrontation with a fellow student the previous spring. Jared transferred to a new school to get a fresh start.
I remember him being kind of somber. He wasn't very talkative.
We were going to get him into counseling and some sort of help because we knew there was something wrong. It was just not normal.
Brenda tried to boost her son's spirits with a birthday celebration.
When Jared had his 13th birthday party, they had a Skittle war in the basement. That was his favorite candy, so they just threw Skittles back and forth. Bags of Skittles all over the floor everywhere.
A few days later, on September 29th, Jared and his mom argued about him not finishing his homework.
He wasn't talking to me very much that morning. He knew I had to go to work, and he had climbed up this tree. I felt like, oh, what can I do? There's nothing I can do. I had just talked to my husband, asking him what we could do to help him, you know. And so Bill was going to see if he could talk some sense into him.
My mom allowed him to stay home, and she went to work.
few hours later, Brenda received a disturbing message.
So I got a phone call from the fire station saying, Brenda, you need to go home. I said, is it Jared? And she said, yes, your husband's at home and he needs you at home now. I came in and all these police officers were lined up down my hall. And they all had these somber looks, and Bill was sitting at the table in a chair. And as I get halfway down the hall, he says, Brenda, Jared's dead. He shot himself. I couldn't believe it. I fell to the ground and I just started crying on Bill's lap. This exact spot is where Jared took his life. He died right here. He came to my office. He picked up the phone, this very phone, and he called my husband at work, and he said, Dad, I just called to say goodbye. And then he shot himself.
My dad owns guns. He's an avid hunter, and my dad keeps the guns and the cartridges separate, so Jared probably didn't have any hard time finding the gun, but he had to go and search for the cartridges.
I never thought in my wildest dreams it would be in the ability of a boy who just turned 13 and had everything to live for. I never would have thought he'd ever. I can imagine a kid would do something like that. I would never have left if I had any idea that he would have done such a thing.
In September 1999, Brenda High filed a lawsuit against the Pasco School District. She believed officials were negligent in the way they handled her son's fight with the other student.
The lawsuit was High versus Pasco School District. The hard part was to show the connection between bullying and suicide.
School officials strongly denied that they had reason to suspect Jared was suicidal, pointing out that the boy's death occurred several months after he left McLaughlin Middle School. The case was eventually settled out of court in March 2003.
Sometimes a tragedy like this is what it takes for a big wake-up call for bullying to be addressed in schools.
The Pasco School District declined to comment, but did confirm that policies and several programs in place from the kindergarten to high school level help students and employees identify what bullying looks like, how to stop it, how to report it, and how students can make an impact by discouraging bullying.
Since the incident with Jared happened, schools now have to track incidents of bullying and harassment, and they really try to get in front of the problem.
Jared was buried in Idaho because that's where the family is buried. My grandparents live there.
We always take with us a couple of bags of Skittles.
That was his favorite candy, so now when we visit him, we leave Skittles at his gravesite.
I'm hoping that when people think about Jared, they think about a boy who was just normal in every way, and yet he took his life, you know. It could happen to anybody. It could happen to anybody. And if there's anybody that thinks that it couldn't happen to him, they better wake up.
Brenda High, whose son Jared committed suicide after being bullied in 1998, was also determined to make a difference.
After Jared's death, his mother became an activist. She got really involved in getting laws passed to prevent bullying.
In January 2002, Brenda testified in support of tough legislation to fix the problem.
When Washington State's anti-bullying law was passed, I was just thrilled. There are 41 states that have anti-bullying laws right now.
As part of her ongoing efforts, Brenda wrote Bullycide in America, a compilation of personal stories told by mothers who lost their kids.
If somebody can be saved from the kind of heartache that we've experienced, then Jared didn't die in vain.
A bully can turn their lives around. Instead of hurting other kids, why not save other kids? Why not be their hero instead of the bully?